The internet is full of scary stories. Hearing about awful things going on in the world, reading tweets from terrible people, scarily bad fanfictions, etc. However, jokes aside, the internet is home to some of the most iconic scary stories of the modern day, all grouped together into one group: Creepypastas. Many of us may have heard the term creepypasta going around to describe certain scary stories online or horror-themed characters on the internet. Generally speaking, creepypastas are defined as scary stories written by users on online message forums. The name creepypasta is actually derivative of the term copypasta, which, for those unaware, is a section of text that's copied and pasted across the internet on social media or online message boards. Creepypastas are essentially just scary paranormal stories online shared like copypastas. The term was coined sometime around 2007 on the online image board site 4chan. For years, people have been sharing these scary stories online and have become something of modern day equivalents to myths. The definition of a myth is a traditional story explaining a social or natural phenomenon, usually involving some sort of supernatural entity. While these stories online are absolutely the furthest thing from a traditional story that we can get, I would make the argument that creepypastas count as modern day myths. To explain this, I feel like I should take some time to go over some of the most iconic creepypasta stories on the internet, and then we could return to my argument. In my eyes, there is no other creepypasta more popular and iconic than Slenderman. Slenderman is an unnaturally tall, humanoid creature. Typically, he was depicted to be wearing a dark suit with a tie. He's always depicted with an uncanny blank face of nothing but pure white or pale gray. He's often portrayed as being able to extend or stretch his limbs, and has dark tentacles protruding from his back. He usually inhabits more liminal spaces, like abandoned grounds or most iconically, woods or forests. There are multiple different iterations of the Slenderman story. Much like actual myths, the story changes a bit depending on who's telling it. But some commonly consistent traits in each story will be stuff like him appearing by the woods or forest and pulling kids away from their friends and family, and for those kids end up going missing. The very first traces of the Slenderman story go back to June 10th, 2009. The original form of Slenderman was created by a user on the Something Awful forums named Eric Knudsen under his alias Victor Surge. He replied to a post on the forums to contribute edited photos that could serve as a basis for new mythologies or stories. The reply was attached with two different images. One features a group of kids and teens outside with Slenderman in the background. The other features some kids on a playground with Slenderman looming over the kids in the background. Alongside the images posted, Knudsen provided the following snippet of text. "We didn't want to go. We didn't want to kill them, but its persistent silence and outstretched arms horrified and comforted us at the same time." Through this photo and the associated captioning, this technically counts as the very first incarnation of a Slenderman creepypasta story. Slenderman is definitely the most successful creepypasta story online. The character did numbers online. 2 viral video game adaptations, a terrible movie, and countless mainstream media references. Many scholars actually have argued that while Slenderman is a fictional work with a very identifiable origin point, Slenderman counts as a form of online folklore. Honestly, I would strongly agree. I think part of the reason for that is the collectiveness of Slenderman and just creepypasta in general. It's not just a story created by one individual. This is a collective story created by many, changed and created anew by different people. When talking about creepypastas, it's hard to not mention another of the most iconic creepypastas, Jeff the Killer. The character is most well known by the image on screen right now. High chance you've seen it yourself. However, it's generally undecided upon where this original image comes from. There is an older version of the image that the earliest date people can track down for is 2004, but no one is sure what the original image for this character looks like. Something worth noting though is that the original story of Jeff the Killer was based on this image. The image came first. The most iconic version of the Jeff the Killer story goes something like this. 13-year-old Jeff and his brother Lou move into a new town with their family. While in this new town, they're confronted by bullies and are threatened with knives. Jeff ends up beating up the bullies badly, and when the police get involved, Lou decides to take the fall for things. This leaves Jeff guilt-ridden and depressed. Later that day, Jeff is once again confronted by the bullies, and from that encounter, Jeff is horrifically burnt in an attack with alcohol and bleach. This leaves Jeff to become physically disfigured in a way that matches the iconic image. Jeff's new look ends up driving him to utter insanity. While in this insanity, he carves a smile into his face with a knife and then murders his family, ending with Jeff going after his brother Lou, uttering the phrase, "go to sleep," before killing him. While I'd argue Slenderman is the most iconic and successful creepypasta, Jeff the Killer is the face of the creepypasta scene. I could totally see why in there too. Taking the ideas of a relatable story about fighting back against your bullies going wrong, taking it to an extreme and letting the insanity of a typical creepypasta take over, He doesn't totally fit the mold of other creepypasta stories about monsters and creatures and other things of the sort, but instead I think it's a very interesting fit of a creepypasta. A popular genre of creepypasta is the video game creepypasta, taking the idea of creepypasta and infusing it with childhood memories of playing video games. Some of the most popular ones in this genre would be something like Sonic.exe, the story of a guy playing a haunted version of Sonic and noticing spooky, scary things going on, woo. Or Herobrine. He is another one of the most popular creepypastas in general, probably because of the extreme popularity of Minecraft itself. This one being a story of someone starting a new Minecraft world, only to find they are sharing the world with another player, Herobrine, who's haunting the world, boo. But the most popular video game creepypasta is easily Ben Drowned. It's a story following a college student going under the alias of Steeple online, who acquires a copy of Zelda Majora's Mask at a yard sale. When he goes to play the game, he notices the previous owner's save file is still there, under the name Ben. As Steeple plays the game, he notices certain things are ever so slightly off and getting weirder by the minute, going from inconsistencies to glitches. He goes to post about his discoveries on 4chan to help document his findings. Out of curiosity, Steeple decides he wants to figure out ways to modify the game in some capacity. One of these ways was by doing a very common glitch where he skipped the third day's ending with the ability to explore the in-game world. When he performs the glitch, it breaks the normality of the game and finding himself alone in one of the game's areas, Clocktown. He's unable to advance the game by turning back time in the game and endlessly hearing the laugh of the salesman. In his attempt to get a game over screen, Steeple drowns Link in the pond. When this happens, Link clutches his head screaming like he does when he puts on a mask in the game, with the screen now flashing to depict the salesman smiling and laughing. The Song of Healing starts playing, but this time in reverse. A statue of Link is summoned with a creepy, unnerving stare. The statue follows the in-game character Steeple around as he tries to escape the statue following him, but nothing works. Then Steeple tries to reposition the camera in the game to face the statue directly. The screen flashes back to the shopkeeper. Now the statue, Link, and shopkeeper staring directly at Steeple. From here, Steeple spends the next few days playing the game and documenting his weird-ass findings in extreme detail. Steeple tries to return the car to the old man who sold it to him, but learns that he moved away. He talks to a neighbor about this, and he concludes that his copy of Zelda Majora's Mask is haunted by its previous owner, Ben, who had drowned to death 8 years prior. In the game, a figure calling themselves Ben begins contacting Steeple within and outside the Majora's Mask, speaking through an old AI bot, Cleverbot, and changing his computer's wallpaper to the elegy of emptiness. The elegy statue becomes the physical form of Ben and begins to take pride in manipulating Steeple. Ben is then revealed to be hijacking his computer, to which then Ben decides to recount a false narrative of the creepypasta story in resolution to 4chan and YouTube, using it to escape from the confines of Majora's Mask cartridge and declaring, "Now I am everywhere." However, despite the efforts of Ben, a file called thetruth.rtf surfaces, a final account of the past week's events, to which Steeple is never seen again afterwards. This story is very notable, not just because of what the story is being told, but how the story gets told, being told through frequent 4chan and YouTube posts. It's like a text-based version of a found footage movie. Also, going back to my myth argument, this story, alongside other video game myths, help paint the picture of creepypastas as being myths. I mean, think about it. Whenever you've played a video game yourself, haven't you ever experienced something weird going on with it? Myths like these can offer unorthodox answers to these questions. I remember my friends and I as kids very much believing in the idea of Herobrine in Minecraft and scaring us shitless. Stuff like this is very fascinating to read up on. From my perspective, these creepypastas are all decentralized myths in one way or another. The internet would be boring without things like creepypastas. And don't think that creepypastas are dead just because all these examples from a decade ago. Siren Head is a more recent example of a creepypasta, or I'm sure you've heard of the Backrooms. Well, that counts as a creepypasta too. And there's still plenty of other iconic creepypasta stories I didn't get a chance to talk about. There's plenty of more creepypastas out there to help define the genre. But to prevent us from making this any longer than it is, I'll leave it here. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely day, and hopefully I'll even see you next time. Bye bye.